All right, what is up, guys? I wanted to talk to you this morning about something that popped in my head a couple days ago. A realization I came to. Something I already knew about and could have and should have thought of, but I hadn't yet. Something relative to our ongoing situation in this country, which by all means is, as Trump says, endless war, but it's a generational problem. It's a generational problem, guys. And I know I don't have to explain this to any of you, but compare it to any wars, confrontations, conflicts we've been in for past few decades. Pretty much going back to Vietnam. You can't fix this. Any one of us can imagine that, looking at these idiots on the left that were fighting. Not leftists, but these extremists on the left. Because it's not necessarily Democrats, they're just left. Do we really think we can change them? No, you almost have to commit a purge and start over with the next generation. Anyway, before I begin on that, I have to apologize for my absence. I meant to do like I said and put at least a video out a day, or as often as I could, but things have gotten a little not crazy, but for lack of a better term, crazy. In my family life, we've had some stuff going on that needed taken care of and required my focus. Plus, getting back to normal hours at my work, so I'm working more. But here I am. So I am sorry about that, but I'm back, and I will stay back as best I can. Oh look, geese flying in a crappy formation. They were in the middle of a switch rotation. Alright, so we are in a generational war, or at least the cold version of a generational war. Because isn't a war yet? You could debate back and forth. I don't know, it's hard to say since, for the most part, these folks on the left crying for freedom and calling us Nazis when really they're socialists crying for socialism. We're truck. Yeah, no blinker because I'm from Florida. Okay. Sunshine. You look at these mostly young, dumb hippies on the left. These liberal extremists. For the most part, they are not armed, and if they are armed, they don't have training, any training whatsoever. They don't even know the basics. Should we fear them? No, I don't think so. I mean, I think there still needs to be a healthy concern, and I think anyone that doesn't have a little bit of fear because of that, I mean, shit can still happen. So I would expect people to have that's a healthy reaction. And this is a scary situation. And it doesn't take training, especially when you have a mob on your side. And the powerful people have the mob on their side. Any of you that were old enough to remember Gladiator or have seen Gladiator. Win the crowd. Mob is Rome. The mob is Rome. The people are the mob, and the mob is Rome. Well, right now, our Rome is burning. But we already know that. You didn't come here to hear about that. Lord knows none of us need to think about it any more than we already are. But we are in a generational war. These will be generational issues. And what popped in my head a couple days ago is the realization that what is going on here is just like what happened in Bosnia, Chechnya. Serbia, pretty much any Eastern European country that changes the regime every 10 days. I don't know any of the EAs or stands. Half the countries, half the nations in the Middle East, right? Just endless generational warfare, because these are generational issues. And you can't change minds once situations are like this, and once things are this tense, you won't be able to change their mind. Anything you do is just going to infuriate the opposite side, your opposition, even more than they already are. You can try and play nice. Nice isn't effective, and we'll try and play nice until we have no other option, until the very last line has been crossed. And we're getting closer and closer to that line. We're almost towing that line. Once we reach that last straw, all hell is going to break loose. More examples would be Scotland, obviously centuries ago. But still, they have their issues. Scotland is like Texas of the UK. Every 10 or 20 years or so, they tried to succeed. And remember, a few years ago, they did to some degree. And that was spurred on by something that happened literally a couple months before it. Scotland discovered a huge natural oil deposit off their coast in the North Sea. And it was in Scottish waters, but because they are part of the UK, that's part of Britain, the Queen was like, nope, that's all of ours. No, don't think so. But okay, Queenie. Reptilian overlord, I don't know. She had Diana killed. Anyway. South Africa. Look what was going on again a couple of years ago. Ireland. My people, my family come from Germany, England, Scotland, Ireland, Wales. But a large chunk come from Ireland. My family, the Nashes, are English and Irish. One of my dad's cousins was killed in Bloody Sunday in Derry in 1972. The Irish have 2 Bloody Sundays in their history. Look them up if you want. But look up modern Irish history. Ireland has had problem with the British for over 850 years. slave plantations actually came out of Northern Ireland. That's where they were first introduced. We were enslaved for 850 years. By the 1850s, Britain started easing up and saying, you know what, we're going to give Catholics and nationalists some rights. We're going to give crap to them. We're going to give them all sorts of stuff. It's yours right now, but we're giving half of it to them. Do you want that? Is that what you really want? That's what you get with socialism. But Britain was trying to be humane for once and do the right thing. So they were giving land and everything else they were taking it from the Protestants and from the loyalists and royalists, from those who would call themselves British in Northern Ireland, giving it to the Catholics. Which Northern Ireland, up until the 1800s, was typically a Catholic stronghold anyway, so really they were giving it back. Well, the Protestants up there said, no, we ain't playing this game. And they created a covenant, a treaty, which founded the Ulster Volunteer Force, Ulster just being a Protestant term for Northern Ireland, and the Defense Army, Ulster Defense Army, two paramilitary forces. And pretty much it was written in this covenant that any Catholic would be killed on sight, that we're gonna go hunt through the countryside, massacre people. Okay, taking our land back from the Catholics, who were really just getting their land given back to them. However, they should have calmed down, because that would kick off a very long and violent portion in their history where the Irish themselves, the Irish nationalists, anyone who identified as Irish or Catholic, would be seen as scum of the earth by Britain, and they still very much are. A few decades after the 1850s, the Irish nationalists decided we better respond, we need to react. So they created the ICA, the Irish Citizens Army. The Irish Citizens Army converted into the IRA after the Easter Rising of 1916. The IRA, we all know who they are. Well, the Easter Rising of 1916 sparked the War for Independence, which actually didn't kick off till 1919 and went to 1921. 1922, if you go by when the peace treaty was actually signed, which wasn't much of a treaty, but that treaty was heavily debated by the Irish Republicans, the Irish nationalists. So that side split into mainly two factions that now were killing each other in a civil war that went from 1923 to 1924. And this is just a basic summary, guys. You could talk about the last 100 years in Ireland to be talking nonstop for 2 weeks. So these folks, these guys and gals, were killing their friends, their family, over a stepping stone because they couldn't accept that a treaty that kind of shorthanded them. Was a stepping stone, and a peaceful one at that. They don't have to fight anymore. Give it a few decades and they would have the full republic they want, instead of a free state that was a dominion within the UK. So you had the Free Staters versus mainly the IRA, which was recruiting new youngsters, and for the most part that's all. A lot of the older guys had gone with the Free State. They were more mature. But so then the British leave. They go to Northern Ireland, and they eventually leave and leave the responsibilities of maintaining it to the locals. Well, in 1969, after the Irish Troubles, which was a conflict between citizens, if you will, of all different viewpoints. The Troubles started kicking off in 1967, 68, depending on what you read. And there were battles in the streets. There were armed riots between people, between citizens. And then the police got involved, and then the Brits were like, holy crap, we gotta get our stuff together. So the British came back. 1969. 1971, the British had over 150,000 troops in Northern Ireland. This is a nation that's not even the size of New Hampshire. To date, it doesn't even have much more than 5 million people to its total population. And this conflict, known as the Troubles, or the Troubles in Northern Ireland, went on till 1998. You had the Good Friday Agreement. Didn't change anything. It was just another ceasefire, and a more successful one than any before. There were still bombings up until 2001. Big one was in 2003, and then they had another treaty that same year in 2003. The British finally left and pulled their troops out in 2007. There's still crime and bombing, smaller bombings to this day associated with old IRAers. Should mention, the IRA actually had a split schism, as they refer to it, in 1971. And the OIRA, or RIRA for real, or official IRA, were the more original members, older members of the current generation of the IRA at the time. And they were starting to lean more socialist. The ones who saw themselves as true Republican didn't like it and went on and founded the PRRA, which were the provisional IRA, known as the Provos or the Piras. And these were the guys that were mainly violent. These were the guys that were carrying out most of the garbage you saw over the next few decades. You guys still with me? Okay, cool. Stuck behind a truck, that's okay. But this was violence carried out by people, for the most part not really trained. These were just everyday people. Now the IRA, during the 60s and 70s, was sent over in small groups, undercover as best they could, to Eastern Germany to be trained by Spetsnaz, guerrilla warfare. So they would send over a few guys at a time to get training. And they would train more guys when they came back. Russian Spetsnaz, Russian Special Forces, essentially they're equivalent to our Green Berets. So Russian Rambos, right? But it doesn't take anyone special. It doesn't take good training. That definitely helps. And if you plan to win, then you need to prepare and train. You need to have skills. You need to do the things. But really all it takes is for someone to get lucky. They only need to get one good strike. Whether that's one good shot on you with a firearm, one good knife strike, whatever it is. You can be the best trained fighter in the world and you're going up against a person that has no idea what they're doing, but they get lucky? How lucky did they get? What kind of hit did they land? Could be game over. Or they can play dirty and get you from behind. You're not looking. Cowards way out because they have no idea what they're doing. Okay. But that's what war is. That's not really cowardice because there's no fair in war. There's no fair in a real fight. So you can't go, not in the modern world, you can't go off moral rules in a fight. There's no men of honor. You do what you gotta do to survive, to win. You adapt. There was a day during the 70s, maybe still the 60s, maybe like in 68, 69, when there were over 105 bombings in Belfast, just in one of the city squares in Belfast, in one day. Think about that, guys. Think about that. And these are the issues we are starting to see in this country. These are people that were at each other's throats for decades. The British troops weren't pulled out for 37, 38 years. They left in 2007, came back to Northern Ireland in 69. And they did things, they carried out atrocities that they were not held accountable for. To this day, Britain has officially apologized to the media, otherwise done nothing. Half these soldiers that took part in these things were given medals at the time. Those medals were never redacted. They were never taken back. Some of these troopers have come out with their identity hidden. And given interviews. So yeah, it's some serious stuff. You'll have to look at Northern Ireland. Northern Ireland, during the Troubles, during the 70s and 80s especially, there was a term referring to the police and just the overall British police and military. The peelers. The Brits called their police, called their cops what? Bobbies. Sorry guys, you're probably looking at something you don't want to see. They refer to their cops as bobbies. And this is a respectful nickname that comes from the time of Bob Peeler, who essentially invented modern police and modern policing in Britain. Bob Peeler, Robert Peeler. Robert Peel, known as Bob or Bobby. And then in Ireland during the 70s and 80s, it became popular to refer to them as peelers. And I believe because that's due to one specific thing. The fact that in Belfast, during that time, it was not unheard of for the British, led by one or two local police officers, to go down streets in Catholic neighborhoods. Again, they're all Protestant. They hated each other. Communities, they were separated by walls known as peace walls that are still up to this day. That's heavily debated, so they are still up. Gates are down, but they're still up. They had gates. They kept these people contained, especially at night. Of course, young people still found ways around that, but off topic. Back on track. Protestant police officers, along with platoons of British soldiers, would go down Catholic streets and go house to house with axes, pickaxes, shovels, hatchets, spades, anything they could use, hacksaws, and they would just tear apart someone's home. So you guys that think about hiding your guns and then claiming you lost your guns in a tragic boating accident, I'm all for it, but that ain't gonna work. That ain't gonna work. If you're gonna hide your guns, don't hide them in a wall in your house. So these folks would tear apart someone's home, literally tear it apart. They wouldn't just rummage through it, flip everything over, break a bunch of shit. They would go through and literally hack the walls apart. Holes. And they wouldn't really be looking for anything, so it's not in the whole house, it's just random. They would put a whole giant hole in your wall. Randomly. Under the guise of looking for evidence and contraband, in which case he would be arrested. So since they weren't really doing that, a lot of times people were just arrested for no reason. And then they would leave. Really what they were doing was they were trying to give them a really, really bad day. The Catholics. They were trying to give the Catholics a really effing bad day. Then they would move to the next house. Not uncommon, not unheard of. The police in Northern Ireland were known as the RUC for Royal Ulster Constabularies. All the best British words. I don't like British words. Constabulary. I can never say that word when I want to. Constabulary. What? I feel like an idiot. I'm going to stop trying. Constabulary. Police. Constables. Who were probably constipated. I don't know. They acted like it. They were always pissed off. The police in Northern Ireland were the RUC. Until 2001, when the British were like, we better fix this, and, diversity. The bias in our police is an issue over there. So they revamped and overhauled the whole thing. Now it is the Policing Services of Northern Ireland, with plenty of Catholics in it. Not really. It's still very biased and very, very Protestant. Less violent, but, maybe there would have been more Catholics joining them back in the day, joining the RUC, if they hadn't been being killed by their own people for being traitors just for doing that. I don't know. It's not necessarily the fault of the Protestant cop. Sorry guys, can't talk this morning. Coffee me. 1 sec. So, things to think about, and those are just some examples, mainly the example of Ireland, which I went off on a long tangent on. Have to excuse me for that. That's always been a very interesting topic to me. And then something else I wanted to talk about was Belarus right now. Belarus getting talked about, ironically, in the left-wing media, the mainstream media. And all these young leftist idiots over here are calling us Nazis, saying revolting against us. You're not revolting. You're throwing a temper tantrum. Sooner or later, Dad's going to get up with his belt pulled out of the loops and be ready to beat your ass. He's only going to let you go as long as he can stand it. But look at Belarus right now. They're having a revolution. The problem is all those people in Europe, they've been so soft and none of them know how to do it. They just run as soon. They're doing the same thing here as all these left-wing affiliated groups are doing here. They're screaming in the streets and throwing crap and doing nothing effective and literally charging at police lines. The police who are in full riot gear. And then they're running and crying like little babies. There were 3 men who were opposing their leader and had planned to run for election. A violent leader. This is a true dictatorship. It's a socialist communist dictatorship. People that oppose this guy are killed. He has said in recent speeches, if they want me out of power, they'll have to kill me. And people keep trying to peace thing. This is why I don't think we'll have to worry about these crazy leftist groups winning anytime soon, because they have no idea what they're doing. They think they can throw a temper tantrum in the street. There's a difference between rioting, like you see in Venezuela and Argentina and all these kinds of countries, and fighting a war. Rioting just gets squashed. It gets put down. Thing is, they do that as little as possible because people, they still need you. They still need you, the people, the resource. They can't rule over you if they have no one to rule over. But supposedly there were 3 men that were going to run against it. Instead of leading a militarized group and trying to kill this guy out of power, they were just going to run against him in an election. This guy is known for killing people. He apparently arrested all of them. They're probably all dead now. And I just saw this story last night before bed. It's the first time I've heard about it. Kind of makes sense. Thank you, pandemic. Which isn't even a thing anymore, but whatever. COVID. So these 3 men have been arrested and they're probably dead. Because this guy's the last true dictator in the world. I would argue against that, but of the old guard dictators, right? So 3 women rose up. 3 women. That's why this movement will never succeed. Nothing against women, but we are different. Men and women are different. You have 3 women now leading a revolution that is far too peaceful and pansy-like to begin with, will never succeed. And once met with any kind of hardship, 2 of them just out and fled the country, fearing arrest. The other one's still there, staying strong. They didn't say anything about it. She's out and walking around, so walking around just like in groups of people, not people mobbed around her to protect her, but just walking around on crowded streets. So I don't know what's going on there. Maybe no one's touching her, no one on the side of the government, because they don't want to infuriate the people even more. I don't know. It looks totally fine for her. Maybe she's part of the plan. Maybe she's really a government agent. I don't know. And they put her in place to kind of control it and quell it peacefully. Make sure that the opposition, the revolution, doesn't gain traction. I don't know. She could be a plan, I guess. But this guy, the leader, dictator of Belarus, is apparently an old buddy, probably a drinking buddy of another old guy who's now the president, dictator of Russia, a guy whose name starts with a P and ends in UTIN, and it ain't Putin. Somewhere out there on the distant edge of my family, I have a cousin named Puddin. Puddin. But no, this guy sounds like he's old drinking buddies with Putin in Belarus and Russia. So apparently Putin's in full support of this guy. So we'll see what happens there. But that is real social communism there. And people recognize it, and even people over here, they're like, yeah, overthrew the evil dictator who's killing all your people. And even the left-wing media over here is going over there and reporting on it and recognizing it and acting like that's normal, which it is. Do that. And yet they keep pushing and calling for socialism over here, and these young, brainwashed leftist kids, for the most part, because for the most part, that's what they are here. It's like, you know what socialism is, you know what communism is, and yet they push for it because they want to get whatever they want, because you'll get stuff handed to them. Yeah, except you'll barely get anything in a socialist country because everything's given to everyone. And there's only so much of everything you can get. I digress. Getting off topic. But that's the problem with that. Socialism is not good. We need to stop calling for that. We need to stop. This needs to be crushed in America before it becomes what it is becoming, which will be a generational war. Which will mean America will cease to exist. It'll be factional, sectarian gangs. That's what we're turning into. If this is not put down soon, we need to put our boot down. We need to put our hammer down. Do something. All this is not crushed soon, it'll be far too late. Talk to you later.